What's going on, guys? Welcome to Looking Ahead to Beto Days. I am Chris, your host, and we have an actually pretty pertinent episode for you today. I say it's pertinent because I'm currently sitting in like the outer bands of what's left of Hurricane Dorian. So today's topic is going to be climate change. Climate change is something that is literally the most important thing that we do. My son is not even one. And he won't even be 50. He'll be just younger than I am in 2050. He'll be, I think, 11 years old in 2030 when there's no turning back. So this fight is very, very real to me. And it is something that, while I might not know a lot about it, it is important to me, and I want to make sure we get it taken care of. But before we dive into this week's episode, I'm going to bring you some Beto news. I'm actually going to bring it to you from a different perspective. So Beto over this past weekend made a swing through Virginia, which is lucky for you guys that I live in Virginia, and I was actually able to go out and experience the campaign for a day. At least the different rallies, for those of us who can't get there. I was one of you that couldn't get to a Beto rally to save my life. My wife went in April for me, and she talked about how amazing he was, and that was without meeting him. I got the request to go out to Charlottesville, I think last Thursday, and Matt Weinstein, who's come on the show and talked about getting signatures for the ballots, he asked me if I could go get ballot signatures and I would follow the campaign from Charlottesville to Fairfax. So I went out to Charlottesville and I was getting signatures, and there was such a wide variety in the crowd that showed up for him, and everybody seemed to be very eager to learn. Beto came in, he spoke for about 15, I think maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And then at the end, the line to just meet him was just out of the bill. Like he was right next to the brewery, the door to go in, and the line stretched out back past a gate that was there. He took the time to meet with everyone. And, when I finally got my chance, I thanked him for everything he's doing for education as an educator. And I said, I'm a teacher. And then he immediately interrupted me and said, oh, what do you teach? He immediately took an interest in what was important to me. And he made me feel like anything that I was saying was the most important thing being said at that moment. And that's how it should be. Like he's taking information in from me. We just met each other. He knew that I had just traveled 2 hours. I think it's about 2 hour ride to Charlottesville. And I said at the end, I'll see you in Fairfax. So I went on my way, tried to grab a couple more signatures, and then started, did my thing with ballot petitions. Well, I left Charlottesville and I go to Fairfax. I drove all the way from Charlottesville, which is another 2 hour drive. So it was actually the easiest drive to Fairfax, by the way. Interstate 95 is a monster. It is a demon, and I hate having to drive on that stretch of road. But this particular drive was easy from Charlottesville to Fairfax. So there you go. If you're going to go to Nova, just go to Charlottesville first. It's easier. There's no traffic. So anyways, I travel up to Fairfax, and, I'm doing ballot petitions. There's just a huge outpouring of support, tons and tons of people. There's students from George Mason University, which is up in Fairfax, and everybody's waiting to get in, and we finally get into this room. And Beto had been out canvassing with a local delegate. And while we're all in there is when the news about Odessa started happening. Odessa had information, or excuse me, there was a shooting in Odessa over the weekend where a man pulled an AR-15 and started shooting people out of his car just driving around, because that's where we're fucking at in 2019. Everybody seems to think we're living in Grand Theft Auto, but This is having real world consequences. And we wait and we wait and wait. Obviously, it's taken a while, and Beto comes in and he starts speaking, and this is when he starts talking about Odessa, and he talks about having a friend who lived in Lubbock but had gone to Midland, and he was trapped in his hotel room. So again, we're getting firsthand information through him. But this is when he started speaking. He said, "I don't know what kind of gun they're using. I don't know if it's more than one shooter. But what I do know is this is fucked up." And everybody in the room starts clapping, and he pulled everybody in. And we were all there with him, and it was this incredible moment that just you had to be there to be a part of. But it actually spread further than that. This video goes viral. You see all these viral videos of him, and it moves you. But I can tell you, it's nothing like being in the room when something like that happens. It's just electrifying. He moved everybody that had come out to see him. But anyways, after that event, I drive home, another 2 hours. I was in the car for 6 hours. I drove like 418 miles or something like that. And every single second of it was worth it. I loved it. Meeting him meant so much. Being able to hear him speak in person was moving. So when he comes to your area, do what you can to get out. It is an experience. It's almost a spiritual experience. It was just great. It moved me in such great ways. But anyway, Beto goes on CNN the next morning, and he's talking with Dan Bash, and he says, this is fucked up. He drops an F-bomb on CNN, no edits. It's just boom, it happens. And, all of a sudden you have all of these people. Many of him are, many supporters like, well, yeah, no, duh, it's fucked up. People are dying. And, again, you get a bunch of pundits who are coming out and saying, well, he's using the F word and this, that, and the other. And let me tell you what, if you were that offended by the word fuck, but less offended by children, and I mean, a 17-month-old baby was shot in the face. Let's be upfront with that. That's horrible that these people are more concerned about fuck than they are babies being shot in the face. And those people need to check their priorities, because at that point you're not human anymore. Where'd your soul go? And I'm not even going to get into Meghan McCain, who has been talking about, people will uprise if they come and take our guns. It's just going to happen. That's the way it's going to happen. No, it's not, because majority of the country wants a lot of these things. You just actually have a pulpit to say stupid shit. So by all means, continue saying stupid shit, but we're going to continue to, ignore you and chastise you for saying stupid shit. They bring out a shirt, people start losing their minds over that. But again, you're missing the point. The "this is fucked up" shirt is brilliant. It's just, "this is fucked up" like 10 times down the shirt, and then it says "gun reform now," right? If you're more pissed off because my shirt says fuck on it than you are about the overall message of the shirt, then you're missing the point. And again, reevaluate your priorities. And that's a good thing about this particular shirt, is it starts a conversation. You can get them right now on Beto's website. If you go to betowork.com, click on the waffle, not the waffle, that's Google, the little drop down menu. When it drops down, go to the shop. Any kind of gear you buy goes to the campaign. It's all wonderful. I own several shirts, and they're actually really comfortable. They're some of my favorite shirts. So, whoever picked this company to make these shirts is a genius. They're great. But moving on, Beto this week was on CNN Climate Crisis Town Hall, where he came on and he talked about his the climate crisis that's affecting the world right now. He actually was able to tie that into just about every single other one of his policies, or the things that are important to him. And that should tell you something about climate change, is that it literally impacts everything we do. It impacts immigration, it impacts poverty and economics, it impacts everything. And I'm not going to go too deep into that, because that is part of today's discussion. But the mind-blowing thing about all of this is he has this town hall, and he sends out a picture the next day where he's riding the bus. Not a private bus, not his campaign bus, not a private jet. He's riding a bus, a Bolt bus. He's going to ride the bus from from New York to Boston. And people lost their minds. Like, why is Beto riding the bus? He doesn't need to ride a bus. Why does he take a plane? He could fly faster. It's blah, 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 blah. Are you serious? Like, really? Like, are you not paying what are you doing? Are you not paying attention? Like, he literally did the town hall last night. The whole point of him riding the bus is to show you how to be carbon smart and reduce your carbon footprint. You ride the bus. There were a bunch of people on that bus. He rode with all of them, and then he had a town hall from it. Are you serious? Like, this is what we're mad about now? You gotta be kidding me, man. Like, I don't know. We get a lot of it, and it's super bothersome, and it bugs me a lot that people just are so focused on little things. And it's the "this is fucked up" t-shirt all over again, except for he's riding a bus. It is what it is. So, let them look stupid on social media in front of the world and everybody. So whatever. We don't have to worry about it, but you know what we do have to worry about? We have to worry about climate change. And that is what our discussion is about today. But before we get into that, I'm going to go through Beto's climate change plan. It was the first plan he put out. It is up until what happened in El Paso. It was his big, that was his major focus. And as always, I'm going to give you a Beto quote before I go through the policy. Literally, not to be melodramatic, but literally, the future of the world depends on us right now. Here, where we are, let's find a way to do this. And the thing that we need to do is we need to fix climate change because, all these Republicans and all these people, here's looking at you, Ted Cruz, in your Waterworld gif. They're climate change deniers, and they're literally going to destroy the world. Literally, not figuratively. The Amazon is now burning. I'm currently sitting and waiting on what's left of Dorian. We're getting major hurricanes every year, and it's getting more and more and more and more and more and more, and people are dying, and it's only going to get worse. Beto's climate change plan is a 4-part framework to mobilize a historic $5 trillion over 10 years, require net zero emissions by 2050, and address the greatest threat we face, which is climate change. He's going to escalating harm and economic imperative. It's going to deal with the cost of climate change. Will measure in the tens of trillions of dollars in lives lost and livelihoods devastated and destroyed. We're the first generation to feel the climate crisis and the last generation with the ability to avert its worst impacts. It's threatening the health of our children and communities. 60 million Americans live in a place where the water they drink is unsafe. 140 million Americans live where the air they breathe is unsafe. And our aging infrastructure and unchecked climate change will only make these unacceptable facts far worse. They're exacerbating structural inequality. Climate change has a distressingly disproportionate impact on poor and minority communities across the United States and around the world. Race is the number one indicator for where toxic and polluting facilities are today. So basically, if you live in a poor neighborhood, they don't give a shit about dumping their waste near your house, which can get into your water, and that's a problem. That's not okay. It's threatening our national security. Climate change is exacerbating global conflicts, reversing social and economic progress, and driving families to migrate in order to escape disasters. The U.S. military has gone so far as to call climate change a threat multiplier, posing new and severe risk to troops and bases. Yes, the people that are living in the Amazon are going to flee fire when their house is on it. So, where are they going to go? Where they can get as far away from that as possible. And, you hear Republicans complain about an immigration crisis, but they're helping exacerbate that at the same time by denying climate change. It's not just Republicans. There are Republicans out there who believe in climate change. So calling them just their leadership seems to not think climate change is real. So, Beto announced his 4-part framework to fight climate change with the full force of our democracy, all of us together, and to face down this major existential threat. So part 1 is start cutting pollution on day 1 and taking executive actions to lead on climate. He wants to re-enter the Paris Agreement and lead the negotiations for an even more ambitious global plan for 2030 and beyond. Reduce methane leakage from existing sources in the oil and natural gas industry for the first time, and rapidly phase out hydrofluorocarbons. Y'all, I'm impressed that I got that in the first try. The super polluting greenhouse gas that is up to 9,000 times worse for climate change than carbon dioxide. He wants to strengthen the clean air and hazardous waste limits for power plants and fuel economy standards that save consumers money and improve public health, while setting a trajectory to rapidly accelerate the adoption of zero-emission vehicles. Increase consumer savings through new, modernized, and ambitious appliance and building efficiency standards. Create unprecedented access to the technologies and markets that allow farmers and ranchers to profit from the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions they secure. So leverage $500 billion in annual government procurements to decarbonize across all sectors for the first time, including a new Buy Clean program for steel, glass, and cement. Require any federal permitting decision to fully account for climate costs and community impacts. Set a first ever net zero emissions by 2030 carbon budget for federal lands, stopping new fossil fuel leases, changing royalties to reflect climate costs, and accelerating renewables development and forestation, and protect our most wild, beautiful, and biodiverse places for generations to come, include more of the Arctic and our sensitive landscapes and seascapes than ever before, and establish national parks and monuments that more fully tell our American story. So this is kind of in the vein of Theodore Roosevelt, preserving our lands, that the Trump administration is currently, they're reducing the restrictions and they're trying to mess up our federal land and dig for oil there and let big companies in there because money talks, right? That's what those kind of guys, that's what those kind of guys care about. And are those the type of people you really want your running your country? Because I sure as shit don't. He wants to mobilize $5 trillion for climate change with investment in infrastructure, innovation, and our people and communities. He's going to do this and this will spur investment in infrastructure necessary to cut pollution across all sectors, meet his net zero ambition without delay, and boost economic opportunity and growth with $300 billion in direct resources through tax credits and another $300 billion in direct resources through additional investments that will together mobilize at least $4 trillion in capital, more than $1 trillion through limited duration, performance-focused climate change tax incentives that accelerate the scale-up of nascent technologies, enabling reductions in greenhouse gas emissions across all sectors through efficiency and alternatives, and more than $3 trillion through proven existing financing institutions like the Rural Utility Service, and a new dedicated finance authority which will have on its board not only the brightest minds in finance, but also members of the unions that would help build the infrastructure. Innovation that will lead to pioneering solutions in energy, water, agriculture, industry, and mobility, and to scientific discovery that makes us more safe and secure. $250 billion in direct resources that will catalyze follow on private investment, creation of new businesses, and discovery of new science, and then more than $250 billion through research and development across disciplines and domains, including national labs, public, private, and land-granted colleges and universities, incubators, and accelerators, all supporting regional hubs of expertise, spurring economic growth and unlocking technological breakthroughs. America is at its best when we're the leader. That's really where we shine. And all of these initiatives, while there's a lot here, they're absolutely going to boost our economy. And when our economy does well, the rest of the world kind of follows. So it makes no sense to me that we're not investing this kind of money. People that work in coal and, at least the administration likes to use them to say that if they have their way, they're going to, kill coal and build windmills that cause cancer and shit like that, when those guys there may be less jobs, but we're going to create other ones to replace them so there will be other job opportunities. 80% of this total investment will go to research with the most promise to dramatically and rapidly achieve net zero emissions while growing our economy. It'll include funding for a new constellation of DARPA-style efforts into agriculture, industry, mobility, and water, catalyzing partnerships with private and philanthropic capital and seeding a new diverse generation of STEM leaders. 20% of the total investment will go to the climate science needed to understand the changes to our oceans and our atmosphere, avoid preventable losses and catastrophic outcomes, and protect public safety and national security. $650 billion in direct resources that will mobilize at least $1.2 trillion in capital, more than $1.2 trillion through grants and other similar investments in our people and communities, including housing grants that help to close the gap of affordable housing in America in a way that promotes improvement in both sustainability and quality of life, transportation grants that cut commutes, crashes, and carbon pollution, all while reducing the cost paid by people and communities and boosting access to public transit. Public health grants that both address the immediate crisis of communities facing unacceptably poor air or water quality and the long-term crisis of climate change. Small business and startup grants that boost the diversity of the leaders whose businesses form the supply chain for climate change solutions. National service grants to mobilize a new AmeriCorps generation to deploy clean energy, plant trees on marginal lands and build more resilience to fires, floods, droughts, and hurricanes. Paid training grants through partnership with unions, community colleges, and employers that deliver the skills to earn a job in this growing economy. Farming and ranching grants to create a new revenue stream for the climate benefits secured through practices like better soil management and development of digesters. Economic diversification and development grants for communities that have been and are being impacted by changes in energy and the economy. Guarantee our net zero emissions ambition by 2050. The latest science demands net zero emissions by 2050. In line with the we can achieve this ambition, which is in line with the my bad, I messed up my reading. I skipped a line. Whoops, sorry guys. By investing in infrastructure, innovation, and in our people and communities, we can achieve this ambition, which is in line with the 2050 emissions goal of the Green New Deal in a way that grows our economy and shrinks our inequality. The Green New Deal is the New Deal that was, presented by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that would help us go more towards a green America and provide jobs as such, much like, the New Deal in the 1930s. He's going to do this by partnering with any city or county, state or tribal nation, business or NGO, any individual pursuing greater ambition, rigorously measuring our progress, scaling what works, and scrapping what does not. Enforcing our laws to hold polluters accountable, advancing consumer choice and market competition in electricity and transportation, leveraging natural climate solutions and supporting ecosystems and biodiversity conservation, and requiring public companies to measure and disclose climate risks and the greenhouse gas emissions in their operations and chain supplies, which I'm shocked as usual. There's always something in here that I'm like, why the fuck isn't that a thing already? It doesn't even make sense to me. So, part 4, defend our communities that are preparing for and fighting against extreme weather. Increasing by tenfold the spending on pre-disaster mitigation grants that save $6 for every $1 invested. Changing the law to make sure that we build back stronger and after every disaster rather than spend recovery dollars in ways that leave communities vulnerable to the next fire, flood, drought, or hurricane. Which, again, like I said, I'm currently sitting in. The Bahamas was just absolutely devastated. While the Bahamas may not be a U.S. territory, but if we do things right, if something happens, we can take care of our neighbors as well. Supporting efforts to incentivize private sector investment in evidence-based risk reduction measures, recognizing the value of well-managed ecosystems to reduce and defend against climate-related risks, expanding our federal crop insurance program to cover additional risks and offer more comprehensive solutions to support farmers and ranchers, investing in the climate readiness and resilience of our first responders, and bolstering the security of our military bases both at home and around the world, and supporting our soldiers with technologies that reduce the need to rely on high risk energy and water supply. So that's pretty much the whole that's the whole plan. I almost read you the whole thing. Because it is very comprehensive, and every bullet point is very full of information that I think you guys need. So, if you get a chance, actually flip through it. The plan is really comprehensive. So for today's discussion, we're going to be talking about climate change, and to do that, I'd like to bring on John Dorsey.
Hello, I am John Dorsey. I am a senior at the University of Michigan studying economics, and I have taken not one, but 2 electives in climate change studies and earth and environmental science. That means, as far as I'm concerned, I am an expert. I am also a supporter of Beto O'Rourke, and that's why I'm here. All
right, now we know you're a Beto supporter. Why Beto for you? Everybody's got a different story, and he's touched a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So why Beto for you?
Yeah, so I first heard about Beto O'Rourke back in the 2018 Senate campaign, right before the Democratic primary happened, and he was this random backbencher. I had heard his name once, maybe twice in my life, and I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. And then I started watching his live streams and reading articles about him, and I was thinking, wow, this guy really has some magic about him. As time went on and the NFL video happened and he picked up more and more steam, I really saw this man had unique political talent, in some ways better than Barack Obama's political talent, heretical as that might sound. And, when he lost to Ted Cruz, I was thinking, great, he lost by a small enough margin that he can probably beat Donald Trump in Texas. Therefore, he should run for president. So March 14th, the day he announced, was one of the happiest days of my life.
You and me both. I remember that specifically, and I wouldn't personally attach myself to any candidate. Like, I still get emails from a couple of them because I was interested just in case, but I told my wife like every day, I said, he's going to run. He's going to run, and that's who I'm going to support. And when he decides, I'm going all in, and I'm going to do a bunch of stuff I've never done before.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of Beto. So as we're having this conversation, I am sitting in my living room while we record this, in the midst of, or rather, waiting for Hurricane Dorian to get to us. It seems like each year we get more and more and more giant-ass storms that just bowl through and destroy everything. Freeport in the Bahamas had never been hit by a hurricane, and it's gone. I mean, that hurricane sat on it for a full, just like like 2 days for a while.
It was moving across the bombs like 1 mile an hour at most.
At maximum, it was 1 mile per hour, and it just slow-moed them, and you can't prepare for that, and you can't defend against that. Like, Mother Nature can be very, very cruel, and we're fucking with her.
Yeah.
And she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
She doesn't like it one bit. And that's apparent. So, what does the science behind climate change say? Like, I admittedly don't know a lot about climate change. You guys hear me say that a lot. Doing the podcast kind of opens me up to learning a lot of new things and learning, from people that I had never met, and that's true here. So tell me, what does the science behind climate change say?
Okay, at the topmost level, what this amounts to is humanity, after the Industrial Revolution, has been pouring incredible amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into Earth's atmosphere. What these gases do is they sit in the upper atmosphere, like the upper troposphere and stratosphere, and accumulate. And as they do, it blocks infrared light bouncing off the Earth after the sun hits it. That means we're retaining more and more heat, which means, everything from permafrost to the water to our sea ice and land ice is starting to heat up. And as it heats up, that has huge ramifications for our ecosystem, for our economy, basically for all human life, as well as, life for everything. Life of everything. And we've known about this for over 100 years, yet we're still pouring more and more of these gases into the atmosphere. It is undeniable at this point that climate change is happening, and there's thousands of knock-on side effects that are going to come out as a result of this.
Oh, 100%. And the big thing here is money talks. And you can see that with the Trump administration, because if you've got enough money, you can pretty much buy anything from them. It's, I mean, federal land, that was something, and we actually had meant to record this podcast on Tuesday. And then we both, John and I remembered that, we had the climate debate, so or the climate town halls. We have to listen to that. We have to hear that. We'll come back to that. And that's something that not only did Beto O'Rourke say, but I also heard and Julian Castro talk about them using federal lands to get oil, which is just maddening, because that's our land. Like as American citizens, that land was set aside, and it was originally started by Theodore Roosevelt at the turn of the 19th century. They're now trying to drill our public lands, and I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was Beto, but he said, and you know what? I believe it was the Republicans used to be all about saving the environment and stuff, and like what happened to that?
Yeah, so, in 1900, Theodore Roosevelt was a progressive Republican, all about national parks, all about all this stuff. And even going up to George H.W. Bush, some elements within the Republican Party were focused on fighting and mitigating climate change. They said, we have to be responsible for what we dump into our air and water. We need to be stewards of the environment. We've known about this for, since I think 1890, when the great Swedish chemist, I almost said alchemist there, Svante Arrhenius, talked about the greenhouse effect. He said, if we keep putting CO2 in the atmosphere, this is going to happen. And since then, up until, the 90s, Republicans knew this. And they've always been pro-industrial elements, but until recently, the Republican Party as a whole hadn't been bought out by the oil and gas industry, by the coal industry, by all these other people who want to buy up our public lands and start drilling for gas. And it's terrifying, because this is a country that's always been based off the two-party system, and right now, one party just stopped caring.
100%, and that their apathy has really put the other party at the up against the wall. Really, Democrats are having to fight and claw, and it's not how it should be. That's not how our government was set up in the first place, by the way.
Yeah.
George Washington warned against political parties. He wanted different political ideas, because a lot of ideas equal good things. Yeah. But when a party stops caring, that just it fucks us all, right? Yeah. Like, what are they getting out of this at the end of the day? Like, you can get all of the money in the world from basically fucking up our environment, but once the world is on once the world is on fire, you can't spend that money. Like, you can convince yourself that climate change isn't real, but evidence says otherwise, and you're not going to be able to spend that money, and your grandkids aren't going to be able to spend that money, and for damn sure your great grandkids aren't going to be able to spend that money, because there's not going to be an earth left. So what kind of arguments are there against climate change? Like, what kind of things are they saying? Like,
what do they use to justify this so they can sleep at night?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, for the most part, most climate deniers with scientific backgrounds know it's happening, but they just don't care. But what they'll do is they'll give you a kettle argument. Like, they'll throw a bunch of mutually exclusive arguments at you. They'll say, oh, climate change isn't happening. That's ridiculous. It's still cold outside in the winter. And
they describe weather.
Yeah, they describe weather. It's like, world hunger doesn't exist because I just had a huge lunch, to paraphrase Stephen Colbert. If you confront them on that, and if they concede that ground, they'll say, like, okay, well, maybe climate change is happening, but it's cyclical. The Earth does this all the time. We'll bounce back. After all, we had an ice age a while ago. The response to that is, well, yes, we've had ice ages, but it takes thousands of years for them to ramp up and ramp down. This new Anthropocene climate change has been happening over the past 100 years, way too fast to be natural. They'll say, like, okay, well, maybe it's not cyclical, but in any case, us little humans can't change the climate anyways. The answer to that is, well, no, because we've increased the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere twofold, soon to be threefold. They'll say, like, okay, maybe it's human-caused, maybe it's completely our fault, but there's nothing we can do about it now. That's also wrong because we have, the ability to put carbon back into the ground and save humanity, not to be hyperbolic. They'll say, like, oh, well, that would be expensive. Let's not crash the economy if we're all going to die anyways. And the response to that is, no, our economy can survive this event as long as we work towards it starting now. Yeah.
They've got an excuse for everything. And, it's funny. I'm reminded of a Ted Cruz tweet from today because that's who we want to be taking our climate change information for or from, where Beto was talking about climate change. It was from the town hall, and he was talking about how El Paso is going to be extremely damaged by climate change. They're on the Rio Grande. Yeah. Like when that water starts to rise, it's going to come into El Paso.
Yeah,
but it'll just fucking Ted that too, or because it heats up. Ted Cruz thinks it's a good idea to make fun of that and be like, this is going to be Beto O'Rourke next year. And he shares a gif of Waterworld. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, seriously, these people live in your state. Like, El Paso is in your state. You can talk. Yeah.
And he's mocking them.
And he's mocking his own people and his own voters. And it's going to be really funny.
Yeah.
When Beto O'Rourke is the president, the one thing that Ted Cruz, would really want to be, right?
Getting owned by the person he owned 2 years prior. The thing is with Ted Cruz is, he's a really smart guy, like one of those dangerously smart people. He's a graduate of Harvard and Princeton. He's an incredible debater. He's probably one of the smartest people from the 2016 Republican primary. But he is an insane climate denier. He makes up all kinds of ridiculous stuff, and he has these idiotic, aggressively stupid tweets like, oh, El Paso's landlocked, you're not going to be affected by climate change. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
El Paso's going to be hit by droughts, it's going to be hit by heat waves, the air quality is dropping like a rock. That's not necessarily because of climate change, but, still because of the Trump administration's environmental policies. And
or lack thereof.
It comes to the point where 8-year-old Henry O'Rourke, I'm not sure if he's 8, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Henry's 8.
Yeah, Henry O'Rourke understands climate change better than Ted Cruz does. Henry has not graduated middle school. Ted Cruz has 2 degrees from Ivy League universities. It leads us to the conclusion that either he is not as smart as we think he is, or he is malicious in his attempts to stop us.
He's willfully ignorant. He's one of those people that are kind of like owned by big oil and such. I mean, he's from Texas, so there's big oil there, so that makes sense. Also, I want to point out that those were the nicest things that anybody has ever said about Ted Cruz on this podcast. So my hat is off to you.
Incredibly smart man.
that takes a lot. It takes a lot, sir, and I appreciate your candor and your ability to at least say a nice thing about the world's biggest dumbass outside of fucking Mitch McConnell.
And Donald Trump, let's not forget.
So, well,
he's also maliciously stupid.
Yeah, but, if Ted Cruz is as smart as we say he is, then, Ted, he's willfully stupid. Donald Trump is, he's a paste eater.
Stupid.
He's a paste eater. Like,
and you should know because you teach elementary schoolers.
Right, I teach middle schoolers.
Oh well,
they stopped that by then.
Yeah.
Man, the thing with the Sharpie, Jesus Lord, back to climate change and the Trump administration doing as much damage as possible. This storm that's hitting us that's caused by climate change. He's more focused on the fact that people are mocking him for saying Alabama was going to get hit by this storm, which just blows my mind. And the fact that he said he didn't even know a Category 5 hurricane existed. Stuff like that. Like, that's what he's focused on.
By the way.
Yeah, no, it's awful. I practice in a lot more so than I should. But seriously, it's mind blowing. Like,
it is, yeah.
We're getting hammered, right? Like, I am sitting, like, we could lose power any minute.
Yeah.
Because they'll cut it early because I live in an area that's on the water. I lived through 2 hurricanes, 2 major ones. I was in Isabel. I lived in Pocosin, Virginia. It's where I grew up. And it's very low. And I remember going out into the street and having water up to my waist to get a tree that had floated down the street.
Yeah.
These things aren't joking matters. I was in Sandy in New Jersey. I was like the only one prepared. Like I went a couple days before the hurricane was going to hit, and I was the only one there buying supplies. Because I had survived one before.
Yeah.
And people died in Sandy.
Yeah.
Right?
Lots of
Hurricanes
people.
are dangerous. 23 people died in the Bahamas. That's the count as of right now. It will go up.
Yeah. And it'll probably go up as it slams the Carolinas and Virginia, and who knows?
Exactly. And we're the reason why. Like, we started this shit, man. Like, we've got to stop it. We've got to do something. And science says that we have 10 years. Like, the window closes in 2030. That's it. And that's why Beto's plan is so comprehensive. It's a really good plan. It's actually the first policy plan that he put out, I believe. Yeah. And it was his big focus. Like, he's like, the climate change, our world is burning. And, then El Paso happens, and naturally he went elsewhere. But like, what, as somebody who knows climate science, what are your thoughts on Beto's plan, like, as a whole? Like, break it down for me.
Yeah, so Beto O'Rourke's climate change plan is, first off, I just want to say at the outset, it is incredibly ambitious, as are most other Democratic policy platforms regarding climate change. It is centered around a couple key tenets. The first of which I'll mention is environmental justice. It's for people who are affected by these hurricanes, which, while not like explicitly caused by climate change, are certainly intensified and, we're subject to increasing frequencies of these hurricanes because of climate change. It means all these people have to move out of their flooded out homes or rebuild them, or just, just move to higher ground if they have to. And his plan would allocate a large sum of money, I'll get to the numbers in a minute once I find them, to help them rebuild, to help them readjust to new life elsewhere, or, help people who live in the shadow of dirty fossil fuel plants get the help they need. It's an incredible plan just from that alone. It also talks about investing $5 trillion into our nation's economy, into research and development, into public transportation, into all sorts of things, to mobilize people and get the market to do what it does best, come up with solutions to things. With the government doing that, we'll have the ability to pull carbon out of the air and lock it underground. We'll have the ability to reduce the amount of driving that people have to do every single day. It is the best shot that we have to realistically achieve the goals set out by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has talked about the 10 to 20 year limit before we can, start feeling catastrophic effects. It won't get us there unless we have the rest of the world doing it, but it's a start, and it's a very good start in my opinion.
Well, I mean, the rest of the world is already taking steps towards that. They're all in the Paris, the Paris Agreement or whatever. Yeah. It's there's one nation who's not.
Yeah, two if we count Syria.
Oh well, yeah.
We're in good company.
I forgot about Syria. Yeah. How could I forget about Syria? But it's very comprehensive, and you mentioned transportation, and actually one of the big controversies, I say controversies in air quotes, and you can't see them, but like Beto rode a bus from New York City to Boston, right?
Yeah,
and people lost their minds. Like, he's just showing you like how you can do things. He waited and got on a bus. You don't need a private jet to fly to your engagements. Yeah. You can travel like a normal human and still get where you're going and actually make a difference doing it. He had a town hall on the bus.
Yeah, exactly.
But naturally, he's trying to make a statement on,
energy
climate change
and being frugal.
Exactly. Yeah. And the media just rakes him over the coals for it because he rode a bus.
Yeah, they kind of just like to dunk on him a little bit. I know that most of the people who are, tweeting about him, we're just doing it to be fun, but it is a little annoying when you consider the real world implications that this has. The fact that some of the candidates are flying around these private jets, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Beto flies commercial. He takes a Dodge Grand Caravan wherever possible, and when he's in, horrifically congested areas, he'll take a bus or a train instead. He does it all the time.
or he'll walk. He walks a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
he'll ride a bike. Like he's a super genuine guy. I was privileged enough to meet him on Saturday,
Yeah.
and like he's a super genuine guy.
Yeah.
I mentioned this in the introduction, but I was actually in Fairfax when he gave the but we know this is as fucked up quote when he's talking about what was going on in Odessa. Like that all went down. It was very, very electrifying. The man means what he says, and when he's passionate about something, he goes in on it hard. And he does not give a fuck what anybody says about it. Like, if you're more upset at the fact that he used the word fuck as opposed to the fact that he, his people are dying via guns, your priorities are really, he's right. Your priorities are fucked up.
Yeah.
And the same thing can be said about climate change. People are going to die. They might not be dying now.
They are dying now.
Well, yeah, hurricanes, you're right. I mean, they may not be dying in massive, massive numbers like we're going to see if we don't fix this shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me fix that. Like, people are dying, but they're not dying. They're going to die a lot more and a lot faster, and it's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
So, my question to you is, what is it going to take to get this done? His plan's really ambitious. And the one thing that Beto really has going for him is that he actually uses the will of the people. Hence, like, some of the stuff he's come up with, he mentioned not wanting a carbon tax. Was it trade and caps or whatever?
Cap and trade, yeah.
Cap and trade. He wanted to not have, he's explain that to me. Because I actually didn't know what he meant by that. So I want you to tell me about cap and trade and the no carbon tax, because that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so we're filming this on Thursday the 5th of October. Yesterday was Better Works Climate Change Town Hall on CNN, and he was asked a question by someone who wanted to say, like, what are you going to do about the price of carbon? Are you going to put a price on it using governmental power? And when it comes down to that, there's two options. There's a carbon tax and there's cap and trade. Most economists will say that either of the two will work. They're market-based approaches to controlling pollution by incentivizing polluters, basically, energy companies and factories and whatever, to stop polluting or to pollute less by punishing them financially if they don't. What cap and trade is the government will give you credits to say, like, oh, you can put this many tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere per year. If you want more, you can buy them from other companies, but there is a set amount. And that's the cap and the trade. The cap is there's a set amount of pollution credits. The trade is you can trade them among companies so that you can adjust over time. Beto's plan would slowly lower that cap on every company, forcing energy utilities to decarbonize year after year, which is really hard to do, but really worthwhile, because as hard as it is for someone to tear down a plant and build a new one, it is a lot cheaper to do that than to adjust to a catastrophe. And the good news is alternative energy sources are no more expensive than existing fossil fuel ones. And I can talk about, relative amounts of emissions later.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean...
Actually, hell, I could do it now.
Sure, why not? Yeah. Fuck it, let's go. I mean, wind turbines cause cancer, so, I mean, let's find other alternate types of energy.
So I had a great environmental class taught by, shout out here, Professor Adam Simon of the University of Michigan. And one of his projects was to have us create a new power grid for the University of Michigan. So the University of Michigan uses 500 gigawatt hours per year of electricity. Most of that comes from coal and natural gas. What are you going to do to fix that? And he said, use solar power, use wind power, use whatever else you want to use. Just get us to 500 gigawatt hours a year using cleaner energy. And we came up with this math. If you run a coal power plant, you will get 870 tons of carbon dioxide per gigawatt hour per year. And that's a pretty big number, but to put it into context, natural gas does about half that. Oil does slightly more than half that. Hydro, nuclear, solar, and wind all emit less than 100 tons of CO2 per gigawatt hour per year. Basically, it is 8 times cleaner than coal power, if not much, much more. And as time goes on, wind turbines, solar panels, cheap green energy is getting a lot cheaper. If you force the market to adapt by decarbonizing, they can incur these expenses by building new plants without going completely bankrupt at the last minute. It's a good plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems fair as well, and that's one of the big things. Beto's plan actually lowers things gradually. It's not an immediate takeover, and a lot of companies were already doing that before Trump pulled the regulations, and I mean, some of them kept doing it, but
props to them.
Exactly, props to them. If you kept doing it because you realized that he was just a giant fucknut, we appreciate it. The population of the world appreciates it. But here's another question for you. I'll see what you know about this. My father's actually he works as a nuclear engineer. He works in a nuclear power plant. And I've heard a lot of different people say, the movement to nuclear power, it can help that as well. But I'm not 100% sure, because once you have all that nuclear waste, where's it going to go?
Yeah. So right now, the best solution is to lock it underneath a mountain, which is about as good as it's going to get. You can't force nuclear waste to become clean in any real way. The best thing you can do is just find a deserted place in the middle of nowhere, dig it so far deep underground that there's no way of even hitting the groundwater or anything else. If you ever heard of the Yucca Mountain controversy, it's basically...
That's what I was about to bring up.
Yeah, it's basically this not in my backyard thing, because people were worried about the consequences of building a nuclear waste dump. I'm not really a huge expert on that, but as far as I know, that's as good as it's going to get, as long as you just do it far enough underground and far enough away from where people are. And, nuclear is a great solution, in my opinion. Beto's not a huge fan of nuclear power, but he has not ruled it out. Other candidates, like Senator Bernie Sanders, have ruled it out, but he is open to it. And that is the best way, in my personal opinion, that we can get cheap power at, huge amounts of cheap power to large groups of people. Solar and wind take up huge amounts of land, whereas a nuclear power plant takes up about as much land as a coal power plant does, but with almost no emissions.
Yeah, actually, and not all power plants run like Springfield, so you don't have three-eyed fish or Chernobyl, like up in towards Richmond. There's Lake Anna, and the power plant actually uses that lake, and like it's a tourist spot. Like people go and they'll get in that lake, and they don't come out with 3 legs. Yeah. So I mean, like it works. It does work. It's not great. It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. And the fact that Beto being open to it is just a very true testament to who he is, and a lot of that comes from speaking to people. He goes to and talks to people, and that's where he gets the support and his ideas for his policies. But you can get all the people support in the world that you want, but even as president, he can do executive orders, but that's only going to go so far.
Right.
He has to get a law passed. Like, he has to get it through Congress, and God willing, Mitch McConnell will be out on his ass in 2020 and the Democrats will control all of that. But I mean, if that's not the case, what is it going to take to get this done? Like, what are we going to, how does he get it passed?
Well, it really does come down to having Mitch McConnell being either Senate Minority Leader or private citizen Mitch McConnell. If the Republicans
I'm hoping for private citizen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, because it is going to be an uphill race for Amy McGrath or whomever. But let's assume that we can get Mitch McConnell to the minority or out of office, because at that point it doesn't really matter what office he holds. We're not going to get the 60 votes, no matter what, to break a filibuster. And the solution there is to kill the filibuster. Republicans have been playing with the idea of killing the filibuster for years, as have Democrats. That's how we have Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. Because Harry Reid and Mitch McConnell just decided the filibuster is useless now and just gets in the way. If we do that, we can get our majority of Democratic senators to vote for things saying like, we'll give you subsidies if you put solar panels on your roof, and we'll help companies, switch to greener power. If we don't do that, there's going to be no incentive. It's going to be little better than Obama in 2015 and 2016, when he really, really tried to get things done, but just couldn't. He didn't have the will from Congress, and this plan calls for trillions of dollars of federal money, and if Congress doesn't appropriate it, we either take it from other departments, which would harm us in other ways, or we just don't do it at all. And that gets us closer to apocalypse.
It's, at the end of the day, yes, it does. And I mean, I feel like if Donald Trump can take funds from schools and daycares on military bases to build his vanity wall, we can save the environment from money elsewhere. Like, yeah, it's dangerous, but
yeah,
at least it's going to do something that's actually worthwhile and is going to save us. And this is kind of slightly off topic.
Yeah.
But I want to plug a movie because it's ridiculous and it's actually about climate change. For those of you who have never seen the movie Birdemic, it's ridiculous, and it's supposed to be a commentary on climate change. If you want a real movie on climate change, watch The Awkward Truth. This is an inconvenient truth. An awkward truth or awkward something is something else Gore did, I believe. I might be wrong. You can correct me if I am, but yeah, an inconvenient truth. Birdemic is not that. But when you said solar panels, I immediately thought Solpanel, which is how the actor who plays Rod in the movie says it. Says Solpanel. Just like that. God, yeah. That's what I hear every time. And I didn't want to be the only one with it. I do. Yeah. My wife has seen that movie minimum 5 times. I've seen it God only knows how many times. I've seen it in theaters. I've seen the Riff Tracks version of it. I own the regular version of it. There's a sequel, and he dude really wants climate change. I'm cool with that. He made a really shitty movie that makes me happy, but it also had a point, and people actually learn about climate change because they're like, what the hell is this even about? Like, what's the point?
Right, exactly.
It's a little bit less, it's a little bit more preachy at parts, but still you get the point at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, if we're on the topic of movies, this one's less about climate change in particular, but it is about the environmental movement. Trekkies will know what I mean. I say as I lose all of my remaining friends. Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home was a 1986 movie with the original Star Trek cast, and they were talking about environmentalism. They were saying, 300 years from now, the humpback whale has gone extinct because it went extinct from overhunting. And for some weird-ass reason, they have to go back in time to grab some and repopulate the species because Earth literally depends on it. The plot is incredibly, incredibly stupid, but it is, without a doubt, one of the best movies I've ever seen, and it helped the environmentalist cause and helped with whales in some way. I'm guessing more people donated and cared about the whales. It had a net good.
Yeah, no, that happens. Like, even if you have a really bad movie, like, it has an intrinsic effect if you get people to watch it. And something like Star Trek IV, was it Journey Home? I've seen the first two. Voyage Home. Yeah. The Voyage Home. The names got ridiculous. Then they got good in the 90s when they did the Next Generation movies. Then they weren't as good. And then they rebooted it. And I'm You'll probably hate me after this, but I love those reboots. They're good.
It's good, dumb fun. Yeah.
Exactly. But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna wrap up on that. We're gonna end our climate discussion with Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. But it honestly, it helps make the point. Like, if we can do anything to get people to notice, like, if one person goes and does research on climate change because they listen to me and John talk about it for 30-40 minutes, that we'll have done a good job. We'll have done what we're supposed to do, and I'll be happy with it. I'm sure John will be happy with it.
Absolutely.
But first and foremost, John, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
I really definitely have a pulpit here. If you have something you want to come on, it's something that's important to you, by all means, come on, and you can be on the show anytime.
Yeah.
But to all you guys out there, we're getting to crunch time. Petitions, ballot petitions. You can't vote for Beto if he is not on the ballot. Talk to somebody in your state. Talk to the leader of the ballot petitions. If you are in Virginia, talk to me, or talk to we had Matt Weinstein on here at one point in time. You can talk to either of us. I'm the point of contact for districts 2 and 3 in Virginia. I could absolutely use your help down here getting these signatures. So while you're at it, get out and volunteer. You know, it's always good to get involved. Donate where you can. We're really picking up steam. Beto's really rolling, and he really needs us right now. But that's where we're at, guys. So
actually, on that note, in 2019, Virginia, and I'm sure most of your listeners already know this, Virginia will be having a set of General Assembly elections on November 5th, 2019. Beto has been working his ass off campaigning. You know, lots of mail-inders have been crossing the Potomac to help campaign for great state Senate and House of Delegates candidates. We need to flip Virginia because, you know, presidents come and go. Soon there'll be a Republican administration in, 2028, 2032. But if we get state legislatures, we can get good state laws, get good emission standards, and do what we can to help. It is crucial that we do this.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. As a Virginian, we have got to get the Republicans out. If you were in District, I believe it's 2. I'll get the lady's name who's running. But the Democrat running in District 2 is substantial, and the Republican is a crazy person, just so you know. So thank you so much for bringing that up, John. That's perfect. We definitely need to hear that. But for now, I'm your host, Chris. Let's keep on looking ahead to Beto days.